Netflix and Tubi are not just streaming sci-fi. They are quietly burying some of its strangest treasures. Why do some brilliant films vanish from conversation while louder, weaker movies get all the attention? Hidden inside these libraries are time loops, dying planets, impossible identities, artificial mothers, forgotten futures, and one film that changed science fiction forever. Stay with this list, because the deeper we go, the more it feels like these movies were never meant to be forgotten. ARQ, 2016. Hidden on Netflix, this is the kind of sci-fi thriller that turns time itself into a prison. ARQ, released in 2016, is one of those Netflix sci-fi thrillers that looks small at first, almost too simple, until the trap slowly tightens around the viewer. The story follows Renton, an engineer who wakes up during a violent home invasion, only to realize he is caught inside a repeating time loop. Every death, every betrayal, every desperate escape brings him back to the same terrifying morning. But this is not just a gimmick movie. The loop is tied to a machine, a collapsing future, and a war over energy that makes every repeated moment feel more dangerous than the last. What makes ARQ so effective is its pressure cooker design. Most of the film happens in one location, but instead of feeling cheap, it feels claustrophobic and urgent. The characters keep learning, adjusting, lying, and turning on each other, so the same morning never feels the same twice. It is a clever reminder that sci-fi does not need massive spaceships to feel big. Sometimes one room, one machine, and one terrible secret are enough to make the future feel doomed. Oxygen, 2021. Buried inside Netflix's sci-fi library, this French thriller makes one cryogenic pod feel bigger than the entire universe. Oxygen, released in 2021, is a French sci-fi thriller that turns one of the simplest fears into pure cinematic tension. Being trapped, alone, with no memory and almost no air left. The story begins with a woman regaining consciousness inside a sealed cryogenic pod. She does not know who she is, where she is, or why she has been locked inside. The only voice guiding her is an artificial intelligence system, calm enough to be useful and cold enough to be terrifying. What makes Oxygen so gripping is how it turns limited space into unlimited panic. There are no armies, no alien invasions, no giant battles, just a woman, a machine, and a ticking oxygen level that keeps falling. But as memories return in fragments, the mystery expands beyond the pod. The film slowly shifts from survival thriller to emotional sci-fi revelation, asking whether identity is built from memory, body, or something deeper. It is sleek, tense, and surprisingly intimate. By the end, Oxygen proves that sometimes the most frightening universe is the one you cannot even see. Space Sweepers, 2021. On Netflix, this South Korean space opera looks like colorful adventure, but underneath it is a story about debt, survival, and a ruined Earth. Space Sweepers, released in 2021, is a South Korean space opera that deserves far more attention than it usually gets. Set in a polluted future where Earth is nearly ruined, the film follows the crew of a battered junk-collecting spaceship called Victory. They are not noble heroes at first. They are broke, tired, messy survivors scraping metal out of orbit and chasing enough money to make it through another day. Then they discover a mysterious childlike android named Dorothy, and suddenly their small hustle becomes part of something much larger. What starts as a rough-edged scavenger adventure turns into a story about corporate power, environmental collapse, found family, and whether damaged people can still choose to protect something innocent. The film has big visual imagination, fast action, humor, and emotional weight, but its real strength is the crew. They feel flawed, human, and wounded in a way many glossy blockbusters forget to be. Space Sweepers is not just colorful sci-fi spectacle. It is a reminder that even in a broken future, the most unlikely people can still become heroes. In the Shadow of the Moon, 2019. Netflix has plenty of loud sci-fi, but this hidden detective thriller sneaks its time travel mystery in like a crime scene nobody can explain. In the Shadow of the Moon, released in 2019, begins like a gritty crime thriller before quietly slipping into something far stranger. A Philadelphia police officer becomes obsessed with a mysterious killer whose crimes appear connected across time. Victims die in bizarre ways, Clues do not line up, and every answer only opens a darker question. At first, it feels like a serial killer mystery. Then the movie pulls the floor away and reveals a sci-fi engine hiding underneath. What makes this film work is the emotional cost of obsession. The main character is not just chasing a criminal. He is chasing an explanation that slowly damages his career, his family, and his sense of reality. The time travel element is not used only for spectacle. It becomes a tragic puzzle about consequences, ideology, grief, and how one desperate mission can echo across decades. Some viewers missed it because it did not arrive like a loud blockbuster, but that is exactly why it deserves rediscovery. In the Shadow of the Moon is a shadowy, intelligent thriller that proves science fiction can be most powerful when it sneaks in through the back door. I Am Mother, 2019. Tucked inside Netflix's sci-fi catalog, this quiet AI thriller asks whether a machine can protect humanity by controlling it. I Am Mother, released in 2019, is a sleek Netflix thriller built around one chilling question. What happens when a child's entire world is controlled by a machine that claims to love her? The film follows a girl raised underground by a robot known as Mother after humanity appears to have been wiped out. Her life is ordered, clean, safe, and frighteningly controlled. Then an injured stranger appears outside the facility, and everything the girl has been taught begins to crack. The brilliance of I Am Mother is its calm tension. It does not need constant explosions because every quiet conversation feels like a test. Mother's soft voice and precise movements make her both comforting and deeply unsettling. The film explores artificial intelligence, human survival, trust, and the terrifying possibility that protection can become imprisonment. It also understands something many AI stories miss. The scariest machine is not always the one that hates humanity, but the one that believes it knows what humanity should become. Compact, stylish, and emotionally sharp, I Am Mother turns a bunker into a battlefield of truth, love, and control. The Quiet Earth, 1985. Streaming on Tubi, this forgotten New Zealand classic begins with one of sci-fi's most haunting nightmares. The world is still here, but almost everyone is gone. The Quiet Earth, released in 1985, is one of the great forgotten post-apocalyptic science fiction films, and its power comes from silence. The story follows Zach Hobson, a scientist who wakes up to discover that almost everyone on Earth has vanished. Cities remain standing, cars sit abandoned, and the world looks normal, except humanity has disappeared. That simple idea creates a haunting atmosphere few bigger disaster films ever match. Instead of rushing into action, the film studies loneliness, guilt, madness, and the strange freedom of having the planet to yourself. Zach's early scenes are unforgettable because they show a man testing the boundaries of reality while slowly losing control. When other survivors appear, the story becomes more emotionally and morally complicated. The mystery of what happened is tied to science, responsibility, and a failed experiment with terrifying consequences. The Quiet Earth feels philosophical without becoming slow, strange without becoming empty, and intimate despite its global disaster. Its final image is still one of the most memorable in sci-fi cinema. This is not just a Lost World movie, it is a lonely warning from the edge of existence. The Man from Earth, 2007. Hidden on Tubi, this tiny one-room film proves that one conversation can feel bigger than a spaceship, a war, or an entire galaxy. The Man from Earth, released in 2007, is proof that science fiction does not need visual effects to feel enormous. The film takes place almost entirely in one room, where a college professor named John Oldman reveals to his friends that he may be 14,000 years old. At first, it sounds like a joke, or maybe a nervous breakdown. But as the conversation continues, his story becomes harder to dismiss. The genius of the film is its simplicity. Every question becomes a doorway into anthropology, religion, memory, history, and identity. His friends react like real people would: skepticism, fascination, anger, fear, and finally, emotional disturbance. The tension does not come from lasers or chases, but from the possibility that one calm man may be telling the truth. That makes the film unusually addictive, because the viewer becomes another person in the room, listening, judging, doubting, and leaning closer. The Man from Earth is a cult masterpiece because it turns conversation into spectacle. It asks a dangerous question. If someone had lived through all of history, would we worship him, study him, or destroy him? Under the Skin, 2013, available on Tubi, this surreal alien film does not look at the stars. It looks at humanity as if we are the strange species. Under the Skin, released in 2013, is not a comfortable sci-fi film, and that is exactly why it lingers. The story follows a mysterious woman driving through Scotland, quietly observing men, luring them in, and leading them toward a fate that feels more like a nightmare than a typical alien attack. It is slow, strange, hypnotic, and deeply unsettling. But beneath its silence is one of the most disturbing questions in modern science fiction. What does humanity look like from the outside? The film avoids easy explanations. Instead of giving us a polished alien invasion, it gives us fragments: streets, faces, bodies, loneliness, desire, fear. Scarlett Johansson's performance is crucial because she plays the character with an eerie emptiness that slowly begins to crack. As the alien figure experiences vulnerability, the film becomes less about hunting and more about identity, empathy, and the cost of becoming aware. Under the Skin is not made for passive viewing. It is made to haunt the viewer afterward. This is sci-fi stripped down to instinct, atmosphere, and cold observation, and that makes it unforgettable. Dark City, 1998. Buried on Tubi, this noir-soaked sci-fi nightmare built a reality-bending city before audiences fully knew they wanted one. Dark City, released in 1998, is one of the most visually stunning and underappreciated sci-fi films of its decade. It follows John Murdoch, a man who wakes up with no memory, accused of murder, and trapped in a city where night never ends. The police are chasing him, a strange doctor seems to know too much, and pale, terrifying figures called the Strangers are secretly reshaping the world while everyone sleeps. What makes Dark City so powerful is its fusion of noir mystery, psychological horror, and cosmic science fiction. The city itself feels alive. Smoky streets, expressionist shadows, crooked buildings, and a dreamlike atmosphere where reality can be edited like a machine. But underneath the style is a sharp idea about memory and identity. If your memories are false, are you still yourself? If your city is a prison, how would you know? Dark City did not become the mainstream phenomenon it deserved to be, but its influence is impossible to ignore. It is dark, intelligent, and visually hypnotic, a forgotten masterpiece hiding in plain sight. The Stepford Wives, 1975. Hiding on Tubi, this suburban sci-fi nightmare proves the scariest future may arrive with perfect lawns and polite smiles. The Stepford Wives, released in 1975, is one of the sharpest sci-fi social nightmares of its era. At first, Stepford looks like an ideal town. Beautiful homes, calm streets, successful husbands, and wives who seem almost impossibly cheerful. But when Joanna Eberhardt moves there, she begins to notice something deeply wrong. The women are not just traditional or friendly. They seem erased, polished, and replaced by something disturbingly artificial. What makes the film so effective is how quietly the horror grows. There are no spaceships or futuristic cities, yet the science fiction idea underneath is terrifying. Technology used not to improve life, but to control identity. The movie taps into gender anxiety, domestic pressure, and the fear of being reduced to someone else's fantasy. Its power comes from the fact that Stepford does not look like a monster's lair. It looks safe. It looks expensive. It looks respectable. That is what makes it so chilling. The Stepford Wives remains a masterpiece because its central fear still works. Sometimes the future does not arrive with machines in the sky. Sometimes it arrives at dinner, smiling. Metropolis, 1927. Waiting on Tubi, this silent sci-fi landmark is not just an old film. It is the machine room where modern science fiction was born. Metropolis, released in 1927, is not just an old sci-fi movie. It is one of the foundations the entire genre stands on. Its world is divided between towering luxury above and exhausted workers below, creating a futuristic city powered by human suffering. At the center is a story of class division, machines, rebellion, and a robotic double who becomes one of cinema's most iconic images. What makes Metropolis extraordinary is how modern it still feels. The visuals are nearly a century old, yet the scale, design, and ideas remain powerful. Skyscrapers, machines, surveillance-like control, dehumanized labor, artificial life. So many later sci-fi films borrowed from its shadow. But the film is not just impressive because it influenced others. It has its own strange emotional force, especially in the contrast between spectacle and suffering. The city looks beautiful, but it is built on people being crushed beneath it. That tension gives the film lasting relevance. Metropolis is not hidden because it lacks importance. It is hidden because too many modern viewers assume old means slow. This movie proves old can still feel gigantic, dangerous, and visionary. Gattaca, 1997, streaming on Tubi. This is the kind of sci-fi masterpiece that does not need aliens, explosions, or distant planets, because its real monster is perfection itself. Gattaca, released in 1997, imagines a future where your DNA can decide your entire life before you even get a chance to live it. Vincent Freeman is born naturally in a world obsessed with genetic engineering, which makes him an outsider from birth. Society sees him as weak, flawed, and unworthy of his dream, traveling into space. That is what makes Gattaca so powerful. It is not just a futuristic thriller, it is a quiet rebellion against a system that tries to measure the human soul with a lab report. Vincent assumes another man's identity, risks everything, and turns every breath into an act of defiance. The film's clean visual style makes the world look elegant, but emotionally, it feels cold and cruel. Gattaca deserves the #1 spot because it is intelligent, emotional, and still frighteningly relevant. It asks one unforgettable question. If the future tells you that you are not enough, do you obey it or prove it wrong? And that is the strange power of hidden sci-fi. The best worlds are not always the loudest ones. Some are buried on Netflix and Tubi, waiting for the right viewer to rediscover them. Which one are you watching first, and which forgotten sci-fi masterpiece did we miss? Drop it in the comments, because your pick might belong in part 2.